Chapter 12 is about accounting and payroll in the medical office. The chapter initial pages with the outline and the objectives, they're all listed there for you. There's a lot of them. This is a good, this is a heavy chapter with great information, but with the timeliness of books being published compared to the research that was done, I'm just going to say this information is old. The principles behind this are still the same. So very valuable chapter here again with a lot of information. We're just going to highlight it because and I'm not going to expect you to memorize and learn the exacts of this entire chapter because again, as you can see, even from like figure well, I don't know what figure this is. Oh, figure 12.3. This is from 2017. this this form is old. Now the form does still exist, but in a new format, etc., that you will have great experience when you enter into the medical office as a manager yourself. Even page 242, the 941 voucher, that's probably still looks the same today, but again, it's 2017. So let's just highlight this chapter, shall we? The introduction starts on page 236, Introduction to Managerial Accounting. Let me say this, being a healthcare medical office manager is very different. There's a whole nother education track and degree for accounting. Um, Many medical facilities will, I was going to say farm out, that's not what the word I want to say, a contract out or hire an accounting company to do payroll because the healthcare managers, is twofold. That's a whole separate um, job, role, knowledge base, everything between managing and accounting. Now, some startups may be very small and it might be the managerial's duty to do accounting and they better do some really quick learning, watch some YouTube videos, maybe even go back to school, start some classes. Yeah, because you never want to intentionally or unintentionally mess up somebody's payroll. Payroll is a big deal. Okay, so cost of products and services is reviewed. There are variable costs, there are fixed costs whenever it comes to accounting and healthcare products and services sold. Variable costs and fixed costs on the very next page, 237. Develop, Developing budgets in a medical office is a lot like herding cats. And especially in the beginning, figuring out how much this is going to cost to maintain. And well, maybe, okay, we bought the chairs for the waiting room, but who's going to put them together? That type of budgeting and consideration and thinking ahead. Petty cash. Petty cash is on page 238. I happen to know there is going to be a question for you. So just start thinking about it. Do you think having like petty cash on hand is kind of outdated in today's world, or do you think can you read about this, learn about this, the purpose of petty cash, and can you still validate like in your own medical office, would you have cash available to utilize by your employees? Anyway, just think about it. The bottom of page 238 speaks to or discusses processing payroll. How do you process it? How do you prepare? How do you calculate those taxes that are required? History of payroll taxes on page 239. Once upon a time, where did I read this? Our FICA percentage was like 1%. And for the time this book was published, I think it was closer to 5. And now, my friends, I think it's closer to 8 or 9% of your money that you earn is held for payroll taxes in the form of FICA at that high percentage rate. And please, as we're talking about payroll, I want you to keep in mind there's value behind these taxes, but the amounts that they take out sometimes are questionable if it's a reasonable rate. Some of these taxes are for your future retirement. Some of these taxes are for other governmental assistance programs. Um, and keep in mind that as a U.S. citizen, our payroll is taxed. We also, depending on where we live, pay sales tax on everything we buy. We also pay property tax on anything we owe. So there's a lot of taxes in the adult world. Anyway, I read about the payroll taxes, the payroll laws, how they're governed, who says what and what it's for. Again, I am not disputing the value of a tax. That's not what this course is about. There's just a lot of taxes. Oh, and I was speaking from personal, but speaking from a medical office management perspective, if you own the office or if your partners within that office, whew, corporate and business tax, that's a whole nother world. But anyway, okay, moving on, page 243, workers' compensation. This is something that has to be accounted for in medical office budgeting, payroll, accounting, etc. You have to have workers' compensation. You also have to have employment insurance for injuries and unemployed. Not if somebody gets hurt on the job and they can't work anymore. There's actually an insurance policy for something like that. Workers' compensation is that is definitely something that a medical office pays for. You don't make those type of decisions yourself. You pay a company to decide whether or not the claim is valid and etc. Page 244, creating a record for a new employee. Whew, those personnel files, you have to have a little bit of everything. You have to have like a copy of a driver's license, a social security card, maybe even a birth certificate. I don't think that's usually what at the professional level what is offered, but definitely a social security card, valid ID, sometimes passport, visa papers, immigration papers if somebody's not a U.S. citizen. There's a form called an I-9. I'm getting ahead of myself though. And another thing I will say this is brought up in chapters before this, but in personnel files you must have verification of someone's education and someone's license, especially when we're talking about a medical assistant, registered nurse, doctor, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, respiratory therapist, occupational therapist. You would never take somebody's word that says, "Yeah, I went to school and I'm an occupational therapist." And no, I mean, yes, that's great. Congratulations. But I need that documentation. I need your transcripts and I need your professional license proven and provided. And then you might want to go back and verify because it's amazing what you can do with a simple app to create things that are not real. And that's of course that is very punishable by law if you falsify a document. Okay, updating the employee record. This needs to be done throughout their employment. Periodically, the medical office manager can decide how often. Employee records must be kept confidential. Of course, they will. In healthcare, if a patient's information should stay confidential, so should the employment information. A W-4 form is a form that each employee will complete regarding withholding. You know, how much tax should be taken out. It's very different if somebody is single with no children compared to someone who's married with 3 children. That tax withholding, again, is very, very different. Pages 246 and 247. This W-4 form from 2017. This is old. But I do believe the newer version looks similar to this. I don't think it has the tables on it anymore. But again, not something you have to memorize, but these are important tax forms. That's what I want you to take away from my lecture here. Updating the W-4 form, keeping a record of employees, of number of hours employees work. Yes, so this is a requirement, a federal requirement. If somebody is paid by the hour, there's got to be documentation. Labor laws want to make sure that somebody's not working too many hours. It becomes unsafe. And for the validity of you having that person on payroll, you don't want to pay somebody for a 40-hour work week if they only work 25 hours that week. So keeping up with the hours is very important. Calculating payroll. This goes back to one of our chapters. I don't remember which one, maybe 9, no, maybe 6. Anyway, where you decide on how many employees you're going to hire. There's a fine, like sometimes it can be too many, sometimes it's not enough anyway. But calculate your payroll. That becomes an important part of the overall budget of a medical office. Paid on the hour, employees can be paid hourly, they can be paid salary, computing payroll deductions. So here's another important form or document that you want to just be aware of. The IRS Circular E. This is something that is published every year. And again, we have the 2017, so it's not the most current. You could actually go to irs.gov and look up this year's. And so the wage brackets, it shows you the number of withholding allowances. And yeah, this is definitely not the most up to date, but you can kind of guess depending on your salary and your allowances, how much tax is going to be taken out. W-4, is for the IRS. Yes, that's federal. There is a form for state. So I think like for North Carolina, it's NC4. So you fill out both federal tax information for payroll and state level because they both take out taxes. Yep, the federal government and our state government, they love to tax our payroll. 253, using computer software, the W-2 form, garnishment of wages. Okay, so let me back up. The computer software for payroll. I can't imagine anybody today in today's sophisticated electronic medical record required medical office buildings, whether it's a rural or even a suburban hospital, small doctor's office. I can't imagine anybody still doing payroll by hand. And what I mean is literally writing numbers out on paper, grabbing a calculator, and computing. I think that's ancient. We used to do it. I did it. Way back when, but today the computer software that you can buy is available. It's essentially errorless. So when you purchase this, it comes with a lot of guarantees, like the program stays up to date with the new tax laws, et cetera, et cetera. So again, if anybody is breaking it down on paper, that's just old. So for example, this W3 on page 254, this is a form that you actually write in, and yeah, that's just not how we do it anymore. E-filing is the way to go. The At the end of the year, when we receive W-2s for our payroll, so we can hang on, I just had a little, my brain just wanted to stop working. When we file our personal taxes for our payroll, that W-2 form, that's what I was trying to get out. That is how we tell the government, yes, this is how much money we made. My employer took out X amount of taxes, and hopefully it's enough to cover your liability, or else you'll owe. And if your employer took out too many taxes, then you'd be due a refund. So anyway, okay. Accounts payable, the bottom of 254. Medical office managers in charge of the function determining accuracy of bills, payment, keeping accurate records. A lot of that is online too with different softwares. The checkbook register, this kind of made me giggle when I read through it because I don't think any of us, even in my personal world, I do not keep a checkbook. I have a software program that I pay for at a personal level that maintains a check registry, if you will, and make sure that all my information, all my transactions get taken care of. That's the same at the medical office level. Nobody is just, I mean, I don't even know. I mean, yes, I guess medical offices order checks too, or they may even do that right through that program software that they purchase. It can just write checks for them. A lot of online transactions occur in today's banking world, even at the medical office level. So just be aware of that when you get hired, wherever you go to work. Preparing a deposit slip. Now, this is still a valid piece of paper, in my opinion. If you have patients coming in paying for their copays with checks, if you get 30 checks in one day, then you or your personnel, somebody's going to write out this deposit slip. And each bank has a little bit different deposit slip, but basically you write the patient's name or maybe last name and the amount. And there would be a report you would run to make sure all the checks did get deposited in the medical office banking account. Endorsement stamps. This is one of the ways that you deposit a check that it's made out to. Let's just say a good example would be if Wilmed or Wilson Medical owned an urgent care, a day spa, a plastic surgery office, and a rehab, and somebody just writes like Wilmed on their check. Well, which facility. So don't worry about it. Each office you can purchase endorsement stamps, and it makes the checks, payable too. And you put in the full title on the endorsement stamp when you order that. Wilson Medical Day Spa, Wilmed Plastic Surgery, whatever. So endorsement stamps come in handy for that. Look, even online banking is mentioned in this chapter, reconciling the bank account. Now, this is definitely something, whether you do it on paper, Excel, a computer software program you pay for through your medical office, you do want to reconcile your banking. Absolutely. Maybe weekly, maybe monthly, whatever I would not wait 3 months. I would definitely do it monthly at the latest. And that's it for this chapter, the chapter review. So on page 258, 259. And yeah, please let me know if you have any questions.